Hello, I'm Ebony White, and today I'll be sharing with you all research that I conducted with my mentor, Dr. Sly, entitled Adults' Empathy and Experiences with and Perceptions of Imposter Syndrome. First, I would like to zoom into this QR code that would give you all access to the references that I will be discussing throughout my presentation. Okay. The main focus of this study is imposter syndrome, which is the feeling that your accomplishments are a fraud and that you don't really deserve the recognition and praise you receive. What drew me to this topic was remembering how I began experiencing these feelings in high school. Then I continued to feel them throughout my college and academic career, especially since I'm a first generation college student. Interestingly, this topic has come up a lot in our McNair class, even before speakers knew this was my research focus. It seems to be a common feeling among high achievers, and research supports this. Imposter syndrome is higher among women, high achievers, and minority groups. Black women tend to have especially high rates, and that matches my own personal experience. Although the feeling of being an imposter can be real, some researchers have argued that people with implicit bias may unfairly label minority women as being imposters. They see these minority women as getting accomplishments that they feel that the women don't deserve and perceive them as imposters. Then they place the imposter label on them. The problem with this labeling is that it may not be accurate. Not every woman and not every Black woman feels like an imposter. Being incorrectly labeled may negatively impact that woman's identity and experiences. With this past research in mind, we wanted to see how people perceived Black and white women in situations where the woman could potentially feel like an imposter. We were also interested in whether the adults' own levels of empathy and experiences with the phenomenon would affect their perceptions. We hypothesized that adults would perceive Black women as experiencing imposter syndrome, but would feel less empathy for Black women out of an expectation that imposter syndrome is expected of them. Moving forward to our methods, our participants were young adults, about half were white, and about 40% were Black, 80% were cisgender women, and about 70% were heterosexual. Through an online system, participants responded to scales about their own empathy levels and experience with imposter syndrome. Participants were randomly divided into one of four experimental conditions. Everybody read a story about a highly educated woman working in a male-dominated context. In one condition, the woman was described as Black and experiencing imposter syndrome. In another condition, the woman was described as white and experiencing imposter syndrome. In the last two conditions, the woman was described as either Black or white, and all other details were the same as the previous conditions. However, the imposter syndrome was not mentioned. In other words, if you were a participant in my study, you would only read one story. You might read about a white woman who feels like an imposter, or you may have instead read about a Black woman who could feel like an imposter, but that word imposter is not mentioned in the story. After reading the story, we asked participants to tell us about their opinions about this woman. Moving to our findings, we compared heterosexual and non-heterosexual individuals and found similar levels of imposter syndrome and empathy, as well as similar perceptions of the four conditions of the different women. The only significant differences we found were not related to our hypothesis. Non-heterosexuals are more likely to say that they would doubt themselves in the same situation. They also felt that whatever woman they read about should feel happy and satisfied with their job. We also compared Black and white participants. White participants had slightly but significantly higher levels of effective empathy and imposter syndrome. So, white adults were more likely to feel like an imposter. Keep this in mind as I move forward through our data. because you are about to see a pattern where people expected higher levels in Black women. We did a manipulation check to make sure that participants actually read the story carefully, and they did. Participants agreed that the women who we said had imposter syndrome actually had imposter syndrome. Now, even though the label was given to both the white and the Black women, participants agreed more that the Black women had it. They felt most sorry for the Black imposter women, suggesting again that they felt this label fit her. Participants were least impressed with the white women who admitted to feeling like an imposter. Perhaps participants were indicating that she deserved to be in a competitive workplace and should not have felt like a fraud. Moving to our correlations. I realize that this is a busy section, so let me talk you through it. Participants that felt imposter syndrome themselves really connected with the Black women, especially the Black imposter women. People with imposter syndrome felt a lot of empathy for the Black imposter and related to both Black women. However, imposter syndrome did not predict anything about the white women. This finding matches our pattern of people perhaps more easily seeing Black women as imposters. Moving deeper into our correlation section, we wondered if empathetic people, those who are in tune to others' emotions, would also connect to the Black women, but they did not. People who intensely felt the emotions of others felt more positively about the white women and were neutral about the Black women. People who intensely understood the emotions of others felt some empathy for the Black women, but who did they really respond to? They were most impressed by the white women who felt like an imposter. In other words, empathetic people seem to save their most positive feelings for the white women. And you may ask, why would this be? Perhaps empathetic people felt that a Black woman experiencing imposter syndrome was normal and not worthy of special consideration or recognition. Their empathy was aroused by white women who they may have thought didn't deserve to feel like an imposter. As a researcher, I realized that data can be interpreted in different ways. However, our findings seem to show a consistent pattern that can be explained by existing theory. And this takes us to our take-home message. I would like to give a quick reminder that adults with imposter syndrome connected with the Black imposter women, and empathetic adults connected with the white women who especially the white imposter women. All these data points support our hypothesis. They also match the argument that adults have an implicitly biased expectation to see imposter syndrome in Black women. They don't have much empathy for a Black woman experiencing imposter syndrome because they feel it is expected. Why does this matter? This matters because perceptions may create reality. And research shows that people who identify as having imposter syndrome are more likely to be depressed and anxious, as well as experience compromised achievements at work or school. We, as McNair scholars, high achievers, and being parts of underrepresented groups, fall into the pocket of vulnerability, where we are likely to either experience imposter syndrome or be given that label. My study emphasizes how important it is for us to be cognizant of how we label ourselves and other people. It also reminds us to be aware that the behaviors we see in others may reflect our labels instead of reflecting their personal abilities. In conclusion, I would like to thank the McNair Scholars Program, the director, Dr. Fortner, my mentor, Dr. Sly, and my cohort for being extremely helpful during this process. I also want to thank you for allowing me to share my study with you today. I look forward to seeing you at the conference.